So here we look at, with this, we see that for the African continent, we see that already there's evidence of all sorts of growth and opportunity and potential on the African continent. For example, we know that 6 out of 10 of the fastest growing economies in sub-Saharan Africa are actually in sub-Saharan Africa. And this right here gives us a lot of hope. But then when you also understand that Africa is the fastest growing mobile market, and then you put that together with the fact that nearly that you have most of the population, over 60% of the African population, that is under the age of 20 years old, then you begin to realize that there are a lot of opportunities. However, we have to understand that still, that nearly half of the African population still lives under poverty. So although the hope is there, we have to mitigate that and we have to manage that with the understanding that there are still a lot of challenges on the African continent. We look at the role that ICT has the potential to play, and we look particularly at what's called the NRI, or the Network Readiness Index. And I don't know if you can actually see this. And what this is basically trying to say is that for a lot of the countries that are listed on the left-hand side, from the top to the bottom, there's a great opportunity for ICT to make a difference in the economy of that country from bottom to up. So Algeria has had a lot of investment of ICT going into it already. So already a lot of the infrastructure exists and so on and so forth. Chances that additional ICT investment is really going to impact the society is much less than, let's say, a country like Botswana or a country like even Ghana or Kenya, which we're in which if you do make significant investment in ICT, you will see significant impact in the society over a number of years. But then we look at the role of ICT a little further, and we realize that ICT can actually be a game changer in 3 ways. First, it can help reduce waste and inefficiency within the society, and as a result, hopefully increase the productivity. ICT can also improve access to services, regardless of what types of services that they are, but those services especially to the poor, the underserved, and those who are in the rural community. ICT can also increase synergies between sectors. You've heard people talk about cross-sector collaborations. ICT can actually make those things happen. The report goes on to provide a landscape analysis. What exactly is going on throughout the world? What exactly is going on, again, within specifically the African continent? How has ICT impacted, for example, the financial services, and what does it exactly look like? We realize that for the African continent, for example, we realize that the percentage of banked households sub-Saharan Africa is actually lower, much lower than other regions of the world. And it begins to set up the question of, well, if this is the case, well, how exactly is it going to catch up with everyone else? The first being the consumer end user arena, the governing regulatory area, and then the market maturity financial systems area. For the consumer end user, we're looking at things like the fact that populations move all the time, the fact that, that a lot of the population that exists on the African continent is still very rural and rather than urban. The fact that there's a difficulty for SMEs to obtain capital. These are still issues that we're dealing with. Government regulatory issues. The fact that there is political interference, regardless of the fact, the belief and the desire for governments to get involved and make changes. We divide them into the customer end user challenge, And then the government regulatory challenges, but there's also the market itself. And I'm sorry about that, but this third area is actually the market. And with this, we're looking at the issues of liquidity management within the sector. We're looking at fraud. We're looking at, in the government area, the fact that there's a little ID and documentation in a lot of countries. ID is a major issue, not just with financial services, but with a lot of other services. It creates an opportunity for cross-sector work. We find that in the ID arena, there's been an attempt, for example, to use SIM cards as a form of identification. But that has created problems of its own. And how do we overcome that? How do we actually make it work? Is it possible to make it work? So these are some of the questions that the report hopefully begins to answer. And then with regards to the market, we look at the fear of redundancy, institutional capacity, the fact that, that there are a lot of banks that want to get involved in providing services to the underserved, but they're not exactly sure whether or not this is going to be profitable. Is this something that they can actually generate income from? And then in the case studies, we look at Senegal, as I said, first of all, and then we look at Kenya. With regards to Senegal, we realize that their readiness for implementation of some of these services in ICT is pretty high because they've done a very good job of rolling out systems, their telecommunication systems, Sonatel, and some of the others that are now in operation. There is a lot of support from the government. The financial services are low to medium because they still have the challenges that exist from the fact that there's a lot of upmarket focus, focusing on premium customers rather than the underserved. We look at the market players, and right now we look at them as medium and see the opportunities that exist there for the possibility of products that can be brought to the table that are demand-driven, that focus on the larger population. We contrast that a little bit with Kenya, where, again, the readiness with regards to ICT is high, financial services medium, and market players are pretty medium, and this has proven out, primarily, partially because of the fact that Kenya does have a larger population. Kenya did have a head start with regards to financial services using ICT, and also the fact that there is such a much stronger government participation and support from the very beginning in the Kenya arena.